Hello, my name's Kylie Doku.
And I'm Alex Watson, and you're watching Teesside News. On today's show...
What do students really think of Brexit? A recent report from Youthside claimed 85% of students voted to remain.
So, was the decision to leave the European Union the right one?
In entertainment, we'll be looking at Freshers highlights and hear exclusively from Bass Hunter and Radio 1 DJ Chris Stark.
And finally, in T-Sport, there's a 60-second roundup on campus sport, followed by our expert sports panel on the latest performance of Middlesbrough FC and what's ahead in the coming fixtures.
But first, the rising number of complaints about sexual harassment on nights out has caused growing concern.
As a result, Teesside reporter Katie Dodson set out to investigate why some men behave so badly towards women.
Sexual behaviour in pubs and clubs in the Teesside area has become a growing part of a typical night out. With a growing sexualised culture amongst young adults, this behaviour seems to be considered as normal. It must be made more clear that a simple touch without consent can amount to sexual assault. With this kind of behaviour happening more often, boundaries are starting to become non-existent.
I've been stood at a bar and someone's touched your bum or got a bit too close and it's not nice.
Yeah, and people try to kiss you and think it's acceptable, and it's just really not.
I think that they kind of think it's acceptable. The way it is now, I think they'd think it's nothing.
Teesside spoke to Arch North East to find out how they help victims of sexual assault.
I think that we're living in a culture at the moment where sexual assault happens every single day. It's almost part of people's everyday experience when they go out into a nightclub. And I think people are starting to ignore it and not take it seriously. But the experience of women, if they're going to a nightclub, they're getting grabbed, they're getting rubbed up against, they're being touched, and it makes them feel incredibly vulnerable and incredibly unprotected. We have heard for decades now that if we dress in a certain way, if we dress provocatively, if we're flirty, then we're asking for it and we're getting into trouble. But I have never seen a pair of boots that could make a decent man rape. I have never seen a miniskirt that could make a decent man rape. So within Arch, you can come to us and talk to us about any experience of sexual violence at any time in your life, whether this was a sexual assault or whether you've been raped or whether you've been abused as a child. And we will do everything we can to support you in whatever decision you make. So please don't suffer in silence. Come and speak to us and get the support you so richly deserve.
Recent findings by Youthside discovered that 85% of students who voted in the referendum chose Remain.
For students in the UK, this meant that almost 1 million out of the UK's 1.4 million full-time undergraduates voted to stay in the union. Teesside reporters Saz Manara and Alex Watson went to find out opinions in Middlesbrough.
Do you know the difference between hard and soft Brexit?
Not really.
Know the difference between hard and soft Brexit?
No.
Okay, so do you know the difference between hard and soft Brexit?
No idea.
Do you know the difference between hard and soft Brexit?
I have no idea.
Is it? Do you want to know the difference?
Totally, I really want to.
Okay, so in a hard Brexit, we'd cut all ties with the EU. In a soft Brexit, we'd remain a part of the EU common market, but would have to accept freedom of movement, things like that. Do you have any preference based on those facts?
Yeah.
The media keep harping on about hard Brexit or soft Brexit, but no one ever explains what it is. No one ever tells you what it is or anything.
Yeah.
Would you want to know more?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, so basically, a hard Brexit would see us cut all ties with the EU. Soft Brexit would mean we remain a part of the EU common market,
Yeah.
but we'd have to accept freedom of movement,
Yeah.
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
I prefer we stay in the EU, but probably soft, because I order a lot of stuff from
China.
from China.
Soft Brexit probably wouldn't make much difference. Hard Brexit would mean
Yeah.
less immigration.
would you want to know more?
No.
Definitely. I don't know.
Which would you prefer?
Hard Brexit is if we totally leave the EU, and soft Brexit is if we stay in the open market.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah, well, that was a guess. So.
Following
mine and Sarah's piece, Jordan Blythe, a Middlesbrough councillor, joins us in studio to discuss Brexit. Hi Jordan, you alright?
Hi guys, glad to be here. How about you?
Good, thanks.
That's good.
So regarding Brexit, do you think soft Brexit or hard Brexit will be the better option?
I feel that not leaving the European Union in the first place would be the best option. However, given the circumstances, I do think that there was a majority, however narrow, in favour of leaving. And I think in that case, the softest Brexit possible is the best outcome. I think that people voted to leave the European Union. They did not necessarily vote to leave the to leave the European Common Market. They did not necessarily vote to trash their own economy, and they didn't necessarily vote to send the pound plunging into freefall.
So in terms of students, how do you think it might affect students if we were to do, like you sounded like you preferred soft Brexit, how do you think it might affect students either way?
I think a hard Brexit entails potential visas if you wanted to go abroad, so there's you studying abroad out. If you wanted to go on holiday at all, as I understand some people want to, suddenly there's potentially visa applications or queues, wanting to go through separate areas through airports to get to your holiday destinations. And on top of that, because the pound is continuing to become even less worth even less, euros will be more expensive, and therefore you'll have less spending money when you go on holiday.
That's an important one.
It is.
Yeah.
So there's one potential thing, but with a softer Brexit, there will still be a free movement of people. So if you wanted to go to Ibiza or wherever it is, that's absolutely fine. You can go there just the same as you do now with your EU passport, no visa. On top of that, hopefully by securing that common market access, the pound will remain stronger and your euros will be easier to come by, and you can buy more of them, meaning you have more spending money on holiday. The other thing is that a lot of grant funding for research projects, PhDs, etc. comes from the European Union. So if we leave the European Union and all the rest that it entails, there's suddenly graduate opportunities and research funding gone. Universities receive lots of EU funding. This building that we're in at the moment received an awful lot of EU funding as well. So suddenly the plug is pulled on all of that and further development goes. I'm not convinced that the UK government is willing to step in and fill that gap, especially considering that, for instance, poverty figures are rising and local government's budgets are being slashed. Therefore, I don't think that the government will compensate for that, meaning the EU is a lifeline for this.
Where do you think we'll be in 5 years' time in regards to Teesside University?
Well, that rather depends on how the government intends to pursue Brexit. If they decide to go for this softer Brexit, then EU common market remains, North East economy doesn't take as big of a hit. Some of that development funding's gone, but by and large the trade remains. In that event, Teesside University will probably get a much better deal. There will still be trade, there'll still be graduates going to and from, there'll still be international students from on exchange programmes still going to and fro as well, and all this will help to allow the university to develop and the student body to continue to grow more varied, more diverse and stronger and more successful. In the event of a harder Brexit, that trade dries up. So suddenly there's less of a reason for people to go to university in Teesside, and even less of a reason for them to stick around as well, especially if the big employers go under. There'll be less international exchange students, there'll be less funding floating around, and if the government's current indications are anything to go by, there'll be less funding for higher education in general and potentially higher tuition fees as well. So it looks quite bleak for higher education in the event of a hard Brexit. If for some reason the United Kingdom remains in the European Union, then funding keeps going. Erasmus students can keep swapping over and keep exchanging. The local economy stays resilient, in which case there's plenty more reasons for graduates to stick around, and hopefully the university continues to grow and prosper as well.
So you're in favour of Remain, but out of the two, you're pro soft Brexit?
I suppose I am. It's as much as I was devastated on results night itself. I went to the count we had in Middlesbrough and it came through 65% to leave and 35% to remain. I'm quite pleased that my own ward had the highest share of Remain votes. In fact, it was 50-50 in my ward, but in most of the town it was quite heavily pro-Brexit, and it was crushing, but at the same time people had spoken. There was a very high turnout, and it was 52 to 48% roughly nationally in favour of the Leave vote. Therefore, some sort of Brexit, I think, does need to happen. However, unlike Theresa May, who keeps saying Brexit means Brexit, well, that's not exactly clear, because as we've already discussed, there's hard Brexit, soft Brexit, and there's a whole multitude of things that you can go for in between. The government seems to be pursuing a sort of fantasy Brexit. which involves all the funding still coming in but no money going out, and all of the trade but no movement of people as well, which is simply impossible because all 27 EU states have already said that in order for common market access you must also allow the free movement of people, and the government apparently is prioritising arbitrary racism and cracking down on immigrants. It's prioritising that over trade, investment and the well-being of British people.
Joining us.
Thanks very much, Jordan.
That's no problem. Thank you for inviting me.
That's all from T News. Over to T Entertainment for your entertainment news.
On T Entertainment today, we'll be looking back at the hottest acts that performed at Teesside's SU this Freshers. We caught up with Basshunter before his amazing set on the 1st of October. Let's take...
This year's Freshers, I caught up with the world-famous DJ Basshunter just before he performed his sold-out set at Teesside Students' Union.
We haven't done a show over here in like 5 years. It's been ages. We've been all over, but we haven't been. So it's good to be here and sold out the place. So it's going to be good.
Is this not your first time in Middlesbrough then, or?
No. I've done one show that was 5 or 6 years ago. It was ages ago, and since then it hasn't been, any opportunity for me to come here. And
Well, we've done a bit of research and we know that you're on your Freshers tour at the minute, and you've been all around the UK. So where has been your favourite place so far?
I was gonna say, ask me that tomorrow.
Because you'll say
He knows where the score is.
No, but the fact is that what's the capacity? 1,300, 1,500, something like that?
Yeah, about around 1,300, yeah, so...
And they haven't sold out in 16 years. And this is the first time they're sold out. So that tells me it's going to be an amazing evening. So I haven't produced anything new for like 3 years because I lost my hunger and my appetite for creating, because the music market was just changing so rapidly, and my last album was, I said that is the last album I ever do with a label.
What is next for you in your career then?
Yeah, I take 24 hours at a time.
Okay.
You miss out on so much spontaneous fun if you plan ahead.
Shortly after Basshunter's appearance, BBC Radio 1 DJ Chris Stark also performed at the Union. We asked Chris what it's like being a Radio 1 presenter.
Before his set at Freshers Week, Chris Stark spoke to Teesside reporters. For me, it was always a big dream to work on Radio 1. That was always my ambition from being 13, 14 years old, and I'd pretend to do radio shows where my mum was in the next room. And I had this little electronic, it was called a 60-to-1 set, and you'd sort of wire it up, and it meant that you could then kind of do a radio show 5 meters away. A real high has been, say, this year when I stepped out a big weekend, and they were like, it's Scott Mills and Chris Stark from BBC Radio 1, and we'd both had to go out separately. And when I came out, all these people were cheering. And to me, I found that really odd, because for me, it still feels like an ambition to be on Radio 1, to the point where sometimes I can't believe I'm actually there. I think it's cool that like people get what I do on the radio, because for me, I always only wanted to be there to try and improve Scott's show. I was a massive fan of that show. And that is what I do, that's my job. It just feels like people have been so supportive in making me grow slightly more at Radio 1 to then get the opportunities that I get to now and get to be, coming and DJing places like this.
And now, Teesside reporter Sam Bradley caught up with a local band. Here's more from Sam.
3, 4.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Whirling Dervish, Borough's most manic night of original live music. Tonight for you, this band here, they're all new, they're all young, and they're all something they played here once before. Please make some noise for them. Singapore Safe House!
We got together in November last year, so not too long really. To get your name out, it's quite hard. Like, you've got to do a couple of open mics and stuff, just to test stuff out, and then once you know what you want to do, then you get yourself out there. Yeah, I think quite a lot of people get a shock because they just see us, and then when we play what we play, they're like kind of blown away a little bit. It's not what they're expecting. There's quite a lot of acoustic, I guess, soloised, and there's also a lot of indie bands around at the moment. There's not many of us, so we haven't got a lot of people to play with, I guess. But at the same time, it's nice to shock people in a good way. I could see us getting a couple of more fans, but just playing in Middlesbrough, I can't imagine us being the next big, massive metal band. So I feel like you've got to move on to other places as well to get your name out. Yeah, I feel like when we first start and we look out and then people are stood there and they're sort of like, what do we do? And then by the end, when we're more comfortable, the audience seems more comfortable, and then we get a couple of people clapping, and usually when we play Cairo as our last song, that's when we get a lot of attention, really, good attention. We'd really like to make an album. We've sort of recorded a single at the moment, which is Cairo. It's just under development at the moment, but we'd love to make an album, definitely.
And finally, we go across to T-Sport for all the latest sports news.
I'm Sam Bradley, here with your 60-second roundup of campus sport. In football, the Teesside men's first team beat the University of Leeds 5-4 in a thrilling game to leave Teesside third in the table after 2 rounds of games. Up next for the men's team is an away trip to Bishop Burton College in Hull, who currently sit top of the table. A win for Teesside could see the guys go top of the league. Meanwhile, the Teesside women's football team thrashed rivals from the University of Sunderland 13-2 to take the Teessiders to the top of the league. Up next for the ladies is a trip to play the University of Sheffield, and Teesside will be looking to extend their lead at the top of the women's league. In basketball, the men's Teesside University team went down 74-51 to Northumbria University in an away match in Newcastle, leaving the Teesside team with 2 losses from 2 games this season and sitting 5th in the league. Up next for the men is a tough home game in the Olympia buildings to the team from the University of Leeds, in what is sure to be a tough game against the team currently top of the league. And that's your 60-second roundup of university sport. Now, here's our sports panel to discuss Middlesbrough FC's recent performances.
Hello and welcome to the Teesside Sports Panel. I'm your host, Jamie McDougall, and this week we'll be discussing the fortunes of Middlesbrough Football Club. On the panel this week, George Harrison
Good evening.
and Liam Kelly.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And let's get into things. Let's have a look at Middlesbrough's season so far. George, let's start with you. How has Middlesbrough's season shaped up so far in the first couple of months?
Okay, to be honest, not very well. They haven't won since the second week. That was against Sunderland. Big win for the law, big win for everyone in Middlesbrough. Local derby. Since then, they haven't won. They've struggled massively. They struggled on goals. Everyone was buzzing over the 0-0 against Arsenal, which is a pretty good result, to be honest. Not that great. They need that win. They need that win.
Liam, do you agree with George?
Yeah, I'd piggyback on that. Arsenal, everybody's getting excited about a 0-0 draw. When you want to start improving, you've got to beat someone rather than just... I mean, in the scheme of things, it's a good result, but we need a win this weekend because...
Usually these types of sides that come up, they need that early season boost. Run of games, like how Hull did a few years back, they got themselves really high up and then kind of bad results came later on. If Middlesbrough carry on with a bad run of form, they'll get relegated very early, very quickly. They need a run of form. They should have picked it up at the start of the season, but that's not worked out. They need to change what they're doing.
Let's have a look at the early season games then. What's been wrong with the performances so far, Liam?
The performances, they haven't been exciting. No attacking football. I think we spoke about this before, and Adama Traore is the only one who's actually looked like moving forward with the team and creating. And I know this weekend he was the fastest player in the Premiership recorded ever.
I think that was debunked.
Was debunked?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
But speaking of Adama Traore, of course, he was a very impressive performer against Arsenal. George, do you think he should be in the team from now on?
I think what he brings is so obvious to everyone. It's the pace. Middlesbrough they took away, what's his name? Adoma. They took away Adoma. He had a little bit of pace for the team. They have no pace. That is why Traore is standing out like a sore thumb in that team. He's the only one who has pace. If they start him, does he carry on with the same momentum he has once he's coming at the games? He's very impactful. Can he be impactful from the start and carry on through the rest of the game? Not necessarily the 90, but...
Liam, do you agree with George that Adama Traore be in the starting lineup from now on?
I think so, yeah, but we're still struggling with people who played in the Championship that are good in the Championship setting, but as soon as we got promoted, it's a different matter.
Step up.
It's a different level, yeah. There's George Friend, Adam Clayton. It's different game.
Let's have a look back at the summer transfer window then, looking at some of the players you brought in. You did bring in players like Alvaro Negredo. You brought in players like Gas Ramirez signing a permanent deal. Are these signings that have excited, or have they performed up to what you were hoping for, George?
When they first joined, on paper, big signings, the fans love it, everyone's singing to the heavens of Alvaro Negredo. Negredo's got Premier League experience, but let's remember when he's at Man City, his first half of the season, top quality. Second half, rubbish. Got to Valencia, he had a weird transfer going over there. He played, but he didn't score that much. So Middlesbrough fans should realistically have seen his form of the past 2 years. Not that great. They thought he was going to kick it on in the Premier League. He started off really well. He got that weird goal assist thing on the start of the season, where I think he headed it against someone. But he's not playing well. They've got a goal scorer on the bench who they never play.
Liam, your thoughts on the summer transfer window and how it looked looking back now at those players you've signed? What's your opinions?
With Negredo, I think people saw it as a risk, but it's not really a risk. All we're paying for is wages, which amount to $5 million over the year, which for getting a player for a year isn't really. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big issue. When you said you got a goal scorer on the bench, I assume you meant Jordan Rhodes. Which I massively disagree with.
Natural born goal scorer.
I don't think he can. There's
you don't think he can cut it in the top flight?
No, not at all. I don't think he can cut it in the Championship and man top flight.
He does not fit the system. He does not. Fair enough, and he can't hold the ball up, but he can score goals. No doubt.
I don't think he can in the Premiership. But when it comes to, like I said about left back, I don't think they saw it as a problem. Whereas now it's developing as a problem.
Fan favourite, George Friend.
Yeah, and I think it was pretty good work in the summer. Really, it's
on paper it looked good. It looked good on paper, but the signings aren't working out. I know we're only in October, but
that's the big thing.
Yeah, to give them time to settle in. Traore has took Middlesbrough to duck to water. It's a good signing, but we need the other players to step up as well.
George, Liam, thank you both for coming in and talking to us today about Middlesbrough Football Club. And I've been Jamie McDougall, and we'll see you next time on the Teesside Sports Panel. Bye-bye.